We've got a few more clips to look at of Trump speaking, this time at a Turning Point USA event. And well, it's about as bad as it has been recently. Him appearing weak as a leader, doing his usual lies and misinformation that, we've come to expect. And I thought we could look through just a couple of these clips and provide some fact checks and context that is very much needed.
Spend a lot of money, but it'll be a very small amount of money relatively. We're going to advertise how bad drugs are for you. How bad they are. They ruin your look, they ruin your face, they ruin your skin, and ruin your teeth. If you want to have horrible teeth, take a lot of fentanyl. If you want to have skin that looks so terrible, take fentanyl. We're going to show what these drugs are doing to you. Nobody's done that before, and we're going to do it.
I'm going to keep this part brief because, as an overall goal, hell yeah, we should spend money on that if he wants to, but we already do and long have. So I do think it's funny that he seemingly thinks these commercials have never been done before. Like he just had this idea, or he's knowingly lying to his base to make it seem like a bigger achievement than it will be, which it's also funny that he then goes on to say we're going to spend a lot of money and then instantly corrects himself oh no, it won't be a lot of money. Relatively, it'll be small, because he knows his base will still boo regardless of what it's being spent for if he's spending their tax money on something.
And to be our next Secretary of Health and Human Services, I decided, look, something's going on here. When you look at autism from 25 years ago and you look at it now, something's going on, and I nominated Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
This is disgusting because what these people do is prey on the autistic community to sell lies about vaccinations to their base, lies that originate from a doctor who just wanted to privatize vaccines so he could make a bunch of money selling his own fake elixirs, when in reality, if these people actually cared about this community the least bit like they pretend they do, that they actually only use to scapegoat their dangerous beliefs, they could look into the research that pretty clearly lays out why this is in terms of more people being diagnosed now. And the idea that vaccines have anything to do with it is so widely debunked, thoroughly and widely debunked by science, medical consensus, scientific consensus, that anyone who spreads this as the truth should instantly be disqualified from having a serious voice in medicine. But this is where we are, where one of them gets appointed to the head of Human and Health Services. What's happened is we've learned a lot more about autism, how to recognize and diagnose it. Less people weren't autistic 25 years ago. Less people were diagnosed autistic 25 years ago, which means less people were getting the help that they needed. And we still see this today. It's common for girls to go undiagnosed. It's still hard for adults to get diagnoses if they're not diagnosed when they're children. To even go through the process of seeking a diagnosis as an adult is hard, right? But rather than applaud the medical advances we made in the country because of this, mostly because of it's the public sector that's done this, and that these people only want to prop up things done by the private sector, people instead want to say, well, this means there has to be an issue. And I could go on for days about people on the spectrum. This is literally what I did for a living for 8 or 9 years, I do, right? And neurodivergence as a whole really is what we've come to find out about it is that it's not this boogeyman that we used to think, it makes you so different. You're like an alien. It's actually pretty common. And especially on a micro level, lots of people express signs or traits of it.
We will get critical race theory and transgender insanity the hell out of our schools, and we're going to get it out of our schools very fast.
I'm sorry, we're going to get out of our what? What was that first word you said there, sir? That must be the clear mental decline, right? I don't know. That's what MAGA says. But this has to be one of the more tired lines that he uses to try and drum up, the more terminally online wing of his party, which Turning Point USA is the perfect venue for him to do that. Critical race theory is a college level course. It's also pretty advanced and philosophical, and pretty much anything people say about it is untrue in terms of the nature of what it entails as a course, and it's definitely not being taught in elementary schools. Elementary schools wouldn't have the resources to teach it, let alone would children have the aptitude to receive it. It just boils down to these people not wanting slavery to be taught or racism or anything, but they have to package these things as boogeymen to make them scarier than they are. And it's the same thing with transgender identity. There's nothing in schools being taught about trans people. There's not Trans 101 that sixth graders are put into where it's like try out a new gender for 6 months. It's not pushed on them. They're not transing the kids, despite popular belief among MAGA. What these people mean is like, hey, we don't want the school to even mention these people exist because we don't want our kid to grow up with any real world experience of like dealing with people who may be different than them or have different perspectives and feelings than them. I mean, that's how you turn your kids into thinkers, and thinkers become liberals because those pesky little facts have a liberal bias.
Over 2,000 units, that's a lot. And they flooded it with Starlink, and it was so good. It saved a lot of lives, so we want to thank him. But no, he's not going to be president, that I can tell you. And I'm safe. You know why? He can't be. He wasn't born in this country.
Can you think of any other president that showed so weak as a leader that they had to come out in a speech and say, no, 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 no. I'm going to be in charge. I promise. You elected me. It's going to be me. It's not going to be the other guy. I mean, like, what are we doing here? And then for his response to that, because he's so upset about it, is to crash out and be like, well, joke's on him. He's not even born here. He's not American. Like, he had to default to racism. Like, he couldn't help himself. And it's because Elon is calling the shots, right? Before Trump even acts on things, the mask has been taken off. We see now that Congress will heed to Elon's direction, which, I mean, this is a scary precedent for an unelected billionaire, in his case, the richest man in the world. And it's exactly what happens when you allow money to corrupt politicians in the government the way Republicans have, where, again, I mean, if the tables turned and this was like Kamala Harris doing this with George Soros or Mark Zuckerberg, imagine the conspiracies, right? Imagine if Biden, let's put ourselves in this world, Biden gets elected in 2020, George Soros comes out on Facebook in the time leading up to January 6th when Biden will come into office and says, I will primary any senator who doesn't vote for the Green New Deal. We're going to do full-on socialism, worker co-ops. We're nationalizing the top 100 corporations in this country, and any senator who doesn't vote for it, we are primarying them. I'm funding that with my own money out of pocket. The way MAGA would cry about this, the way they'd be like, this is unfair, and this is dark money and deep state elites and politics. And I mean, they basically say this is happening without any evidence anyway, so we know they would do this. Like, they would absolutely jump on this opportunity if they had the clear-cut evidence to back it up. But because Musk is doing it for Trump, it's like, let's cheer this on because we're owning the libs. Like, it's definitely not the elites or the deep state or anything. Like, those billionaires pulling the strings of the government were against us, but these billionaires really have our best interest in mind. Like, what are we doing?